Welcome to episode 894 of Apartment Hacker. This is Mike, Apartment Hackers. My mission to tease out human potential in the multifamily space. So today I wanted to talk about beauty in constraint. And I'm going to ask you, do you remember the phrase, do your best, Jagger? And I think that was born out of a board game or a song. But in that moment, when somebody said, do your best, Jagger, you had to stop and just do it, right? There was a constraint in the sense that you couldn't think. You had to just stop, do your Jagger, and move on. And I want to ask you why you think that was so popular. Why did that become such a viral sensation? And the punchline answer to that really is constraint. There was a beautiful constraint put in place in the sense that you couldn't stop, right? You couldn't stop to think about that. I wanted to tell you a little story behind the story and how that Jagger moment came to be. And it really is about the life and the story of Mick Jagger, as written by Keith Richards, who is a band member on the Rolling Stones. And Keith writes in his book that the reason Mick Jagger became so imbued in people's minds is that when they were a young band and they were going around to very small venues to start their musical careers, they would set up their equipment on stage. So drums, amplifiers, guitar stands, wires, cords, all that. By the time they were done setting up their equipment, there was about a tabletop area left, the size of a tabletop, for the band members to actually do their performance. And Mick Jagger decided, either consciously or subconsciously, that they, in order to be remarkable and memorable in people's minds, he had to come up with some, let's call it an antic, for people to remember. So he started doing all these crazy dance moves or these crazy things that you've seen or you've probably even done yourself because you were part of the Mick Jagger or Do Your Best Jagger movement. I'd like to use that story as a segue to what is happening in the multifamily space today with COVID. And while I would not call COVID a beautiful constraint, it is a constraint in the sense that virtual leasing is probably the best example of it. There is a constraint in the sense that no one can enter our business offices today. What was born out of that was virtual leasing. Now, there's nothing new about virtual leasing. All the technology was there. It was already bolted together. People were already doing some versions of that in the way of FaceTime tours, etc. But it's really been accelerated in terms of adoption across the industry, both from a consumer's perspective and also from a team member's perspective in selling in a virtual space. I'm going to tell you, my gut tells me that is just the tip of the iceberg. This not so beautiful constraint of COVID is going to accelerate the pace of other technologies in our industry going into a contactless environment, a more empathetic environment, that is from a sales perspective and a service perspective. But COVID-19 has accelerated the pace of the adoption of those types of technologies into the multifamily space. It is the accelerant that we have all been waiting for. Well, maybe not all of us, but I have for a very long bit of time. I think it really is the catalyst that is going to give cause for lots of choices in terms of technology to be put in place so that we can move the multifamily space finally into the 21st century. So my punchline question for each of you, what do you think is going to stick around after COVID sort of tails off, whether that's 6 months from now, 9 months from now, 18 months from now, or never? What do you think is going to happen in the multifamily space in terms of technologies and the way that we reinvent our business, so to speak? Take care. We'll talk to you again soon.